how do we make really good decisions? I don't know about you, but that can be challenging, especially when the decisions seem quite large for us and can have significant impact into what happens in our life from that decision. So how do we make really good decisions? I don't know about you, but there's some really big things in that. Fear is a big thing. We can be very fearful about making some big decisions, or what's the risk that can happen if we do step out in particular ways. Or, I don't know about you, I can procrastinate in that space and overthink and not make any decision. We can talk about and think about what's right or wrong, and we can overthink that. It's like there's so many what ifs in the scenario that if we're not careful, we can find ourselves stuck, or either making decisions that are not authentic to who we are, to who you are. And so both of those scenarios are a horrible circumstance and way to live. Feeling stuck, or feeling like you can't do anything, and feeling like I'm forced to make a decision that is really not the one I want to make because it's not authentic to who I am. So how do we make really good decisions? Just recently, I was walking along this track. It's a common pathway that I walk on. It's by this beautiful expanse of water, this beautiful lake, and that's what normally captures my attention, that view, and it's breathtaking, and sometimes it stops me, which is good. But recently I just looked at the path that was in front of me, and here's this concrete path that goes for kilometres, really. And you've seen a concrete path. They're made in pieces in a way where there's lines along this path. And it was this concept when we make decisions that it actually takes movement towards a line, and we actually step over the line, and that actually is what gives us movement forward, to move forward in our lives. And then there's another line, which is another decision. And then another decision, and then another decision. And if we get good at making really good decisions, what sets up before us is this path to walk on, sometimes a path to run on, to feel like we've got movement in the direction that we want to go so that we can have a greater impact with our life, so that we can make good decisions. So we're on a path, and it's a path of living the best possible life we can live, that you can live. So how do we make really good decisions? Today I want to share with you some concepts. It's actually what it takes to make good decisions, and I'd probably say it's actually a discernment process to make really good decisions, especially really big decisions. Decisions that can lead to life change and things actually looking different in your life. It's actually a discernment process. Well, what is that? I've heard that defined as that being something like a decision-making process where an individual or a team, if you're in a business or an organisation, so it's a decision-making process where an individual or team have a discovery about what action leads to a better life or a greater impact. It's actually a decision-making process where there is a revelation or a discovery about an action that can lead you forward. And then it takes, obviously, courage to move on that and make decisions so that we can have a greater impact with our life. So I want to share with you today 4 things that are in a discernment process and 4 things that are not in a discernment process. And so it's an interesting scenario to set up. And I don't know about you, if you're feeling this, I'd encourage you to check this out. Try it, train in it, try a process like this. And they're just concepts that you and I can use to help us make the best decisions we can make with our life. So 4 things in this process that can lead to a discovery or a revelation about the actions that you can take, that I can take, that lead us on that path, which is to a greater impact, to the best life that we can live. The first thing that's in a discernment process is that it is the concept that it's a deep process. It's not a shallow process. It's a deep process where we have to go deep. When I say go deep, I mean you and I going to a place where we understand who we are. We go deep to understand how have I been created? How am I gifted? What are my strengths? What are my passions? What are my desires? What are my dreams? What do I have? What's unique about me or us or a team if it's a team scenario? And it's a deep process. And it's a deep process internally. It's not a process where you look out to what others are doing and compare yourself to others. It's a deep process based in the richness of who you are. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is that it actually takes some faith. And if you're a person of faith, you've got an advantage here because God will meet you in that process. And He's a God who wants to lead us, bring conviction and revelation into our lives and to help us process really big things. So it helps us at that point of belief and living in truth and actually engaging spiritually in this deep process so that we can have a discovery or a revelation. And the third thing is it takes time. Now that might seem superficial. I would think that time is one of the most significantly neglected aspects to a growth process. We neglect it all the time. I don't know about you, I can be really impatient. Quite often the biggest decisions can take the longest time. How much time? I don't know. It really depends up to you and how quick you can process this. But it could be days, it could be weeks, it could be months. It may even be longer, but hopefully we can make that as short as possible, but unrushed. You know, there's been a decision, I remember a decision that I wanted to make. It was a big decision, and it was probably about a 6-month process. A 6-month process to allow time to pass. You know, you hear that statement, let's just sleep on it. Well, there's been lots of sleeping on it. It takes time to process it. It's good to not rush a discernment process. Time's a beautiful thing, so it takes time. The fourth thing is that is in a discernment process, that it will take a few key people to join you in that process. If you've heard me speak at different places, I've often spoken of the concept of a player's box. It's this concept that I've seen watching professional tennis players, and if you've been to the Australian Open or any Grand Slam where you see professional tennis players, you would notice that on the side of the court, they have a small group of people that they've invited into their journey to help them achieve their best. And they might have their partner and their sports psychologist and their physio and whoever else, their trainer. And there's a few people that are unique to that time. They know exactly how they think, what's going on, but they've invited them into the process to help them achieve their best. It takes a few key people that you trust, who you can actually allow into that deep place over time, and actually debrief, talk about what's going on. And actually allow them to not make the decision for you. That's your responsibility. It's my responsibility. But in that time of processing in a deep way with some faith, you allow other people into that space to help you have a discovery or a revelation or a conviction about what your decision needs to be. So 4 things that are in the discernment process. There's 4 things that are not in a discernment process. And these are just key things, there's probably more, but 4 things that are not in the process. Number 1 is that everybody's not in the process. I've seen people, when they come to a big decision in their life, involve everybody in the process. Everybody they know, everyone they connect with, they talk about it. It's on social media, what should I do? And they talk about, oh my goodness. It's not an everybody's responsibility to help you make a decision. So not everybody is in it at all. It actually is just you and a few key people. What else is not in the process? And these are subtle things, but if we're not careful, they can really impact our decisions. It's not actually worrying about what other people think. There's a significant pause there because we need to break that. Let that sink in. It's not about what other people think. You know what? There's a great book by Les Giblin called Skill with People. I love that book, and I love it because it's about this thin. It's really thin. But in that book, he talks about this concept, and he did some research. And he would say that the ratio of how many thoughts someone has about you compared to the thoughts they have about themselves, have a guess what the ratio is. What do you think? In his research, his ratio is 10,000 to 1. 10,000 to 1. So someone has actually got 10,000 thoughts about themselves to every one thought they have about you. And if that's true, and whatever the ratio is, it is in that kind of order, it's a breakthrough moment, especially when we're making big decisions, when we understand that people aren't thinking about me. They're not. They're too busy thinking about themselves. People aren't thinking about you. They're too busy thinking about ourselves. But quite often in a decision-making process or a discernment-making process, we let that get into the decision, to the process. What do others think? What will they think? What will they think about this? And it's 10,000 to 1 ratio. So break free from that. Leave that till later. And even then, don't worry about it. What's important is you and I make good decisions based on who we are that can make an impact and make a difference with our lives. You know, the third thing that's not in a discernment process, a decision-making process, is not thinking about communicating your decision to others. Now, that's similar to the last one, but I don't know if you've experienced that. I have, when I've learned that when I'm making big decisions, I don't think about communicating that decisions to others, because if I do that, I go to a place of thinking about letting people down. Again, what people think about that, what people's emotional responses are going to be to a decision that I might make, etc., etc., etc. None of that stuff is my or your responsibility. We have to keep thinking about communicating the decision that we could possibly make out of the process. We keep it out. So that's not in the decision-making process. The fourth thing that is important to understand in a decision-making process is that you're never going to get a completely clear picture of what it looks like. You're never going to get the whole picture. You're not going to get the clarity that you might desire. I mean, simple things. When I actually go to buy a piece of either audio or musical or electronic equipment, I love that stuff. I can spend way too much time checking out all the specifications and sometimes never make a decision. But when it comes to life, we're never going to get the clarity that we need to feel like we can make a decision. It's interesting, I remember talking to a friend of mine who was leading a large company at the time, and he would say that in his decision-making process, in his research or due diligence or just checking out what needed to happen for a decision, if he got to 80% information, that was enough to make a decision. Now, that's an interesting concept. It's almost like we can get a picture, we can get a vision, we can start to understand what things look like, but it's a bit fuzzy. It's like a fuzzy picture or just something over a mirror where you can't quite see it properly, but you can kind of see a way forward. That's probably enough to make a decision. They were breakthrough moments for me to understand that, you know what, I'm not going to get the complete perspective. So, if you need to watch it again, 4 things that are in a discernment process, 4 things that are not in a discernment process. But my hope is that for you and I making good decisions, that we can jump into that process. And actually, for however much time we need, we can engage with that. But at some point, we have enough conviction, we have enough discovery, we have enough revelation to actually step over that line of decision and make a 100% decision and move on it. You know, a 95% decision won't cut it. A 90%, 50%. When we can lead ourselves through a process like this, and actually land at a decision. It's like that path. There's a line and we step over the line. And it's almost like in our own being, we understand that we've stepped over a line, we've made a decision and we're moving. And then it's a next decision and then another decision and then another decision. If you and I get good at making really good decisions, you will live with a greater impact with your life. You will live the best life that you can live. Don't feel stuck. Don't sit in the complexity that may surround making big decisions. They're there. Engage in a process that can take some time, that leads you to a point of decision. So if you need to, watch this again. But I'm excited in the decisions that I can make, and I'm excited for you in the decisions that you can make that actually lead you on a path to where you really feel you want to be. So from the smallest decisions to the biggest decisions, My hope is that you can make really good decisions. Try it, give it a go for it. Now, can I encourage you, if this has been helpful for you, subscribe to the YouTube channel, because there will be more content that can really encourage you to live your best life, to place courage within you to live your best life. We'll see you next time.